What's going on, guys? It's Greg Farley from The Wise Guys. I'm here. We have another video. Before we jump into the contents of the video on the ban list, I wanted to quickly touch on the things we have coming down the pipe. We have Dragon Ball Super stuff coming down the pipe like nobody's business. We have deck profiles of so many decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's lined up. It's just that I'm busy, so I can't get to them quick enough. And that's, you don't care. It's neither here nor there. You're here for the ban list. Just look out for the stuff. We have a Dragon Ball Super competition. Also, make sure you hit me up on Facebook. I think the person that does the best in the tournament or qualifies or wins the tournament some kind of way gets a spot on the team for the Dragon Ball Super team. We also have something like that coming for Yu-Gi-Oh, but we're worried about that right now. But in jumping into the video, and the reason why you're here, it's just our opinion. You obviously have your opinions. There's plenty of ways that you can go, but as far as the ban list is concerned, this is how we see it. We think first up, the card that should be banned, we hope gets banned because it just doesn't make any sense. And if we don't hit it now, it's only going to continue, is Firewall Dragon. Firewall Dragon needs to get hit. Now, clearly, Konami will do something like hit Goblin or hit Isolde. I could see them hitting Goblin to prevent you from reaching across the board and not being able to target link monsters. Obviously that's a bit of an issue when you get extra linked. But Firewall is the #1 problem. And to do anything other is just delaying the problem or delaying the inevitable from happening, which is another deck is going to come out and abuse Firewall. Even if you errata it, there's still going to be some kind of way. You know how Americans especially, but you know how Yu-Gi-Oh players think, where oh, you're going to hit this, okay, well, I'm still going to find a way to break it. So you have to handle the problem, and Firewall is the problem. It's not healthy to have a card that just keeps dropping monsters out of your hand over and over again. Really, in a theoretical vacuum, it doesn't make sense for one monster to just keep firing monsters out like that. It'll disable a lot of FTKs, not that anybody's playing it, but it'll definitely make an extra link a true accomplishment, which without one of the cards coming up isn't really all that possible. You can get there with a deck like World Chalice per se, but then World Chalice isn't all that unfair. It has its gigantic weaknesses, which is how Yu-Gi-Oh should be played. If you have a strength, you should have a big weakness as well. But in touching on Isolde for a second, yeah, they could hit Isolde to push Needle Fiber. I can see some kind of correlation there, but it's not hitting what the main problem is. It's just kind of appeasing the player base and not hitting the cover card. Firewall isn't necessarily the cover card for Link format. There's no such thing, but it's Decode Talker is the cover boy. But Firewall has been the most abused of the Link monsters. It's the best Link monster, and it's not really going to change from being the best. Firewall is still a gigantic issue. I think eventually Boros Sword may take that over, but for right now, Firewall needs to go, especially when you see Thunder Dragon stuff coming down the pipe. It's not going to get any better. And until you handle the problem will continue. Even if you're out of it, I'm telling you, I can see it. I feel like you have to completely get rid of it. Next up, this is our opinion, my opinion, Soul Charge. Soul Charge should be banned. Now, it may sound salty or anything, but what fairness is there in Soul Charge? Okay, your battle phase is gone, but in return, you lost. So, is it really all that fair? It was never fair. I'm thinking about the Sylvan format when it first came out, when it was a 3. That was ridiculous, and it took a deck that's not really that good and made it way better than it should have been. Now, Soul Charge at 1, I feel like Reborn is obviously more balanced than Soul Charge. Soul Charge is just mind-bending how powerful it is. It's not a necessity to hit it, it's not game altering, but in those specific games where the game is won, maybe it is needed as a comeback card, but sometimes it's a prevent you from ever even playing type of card, and that's the issue. I don't have a problem with it as a comeback card, because that's good for Yu-Gi-Oh! To be able to trade off and, you know, have an interactive game. It's just that sometimes Soul Charge operates as a non-interactive card because you're going to get extra link off of it. And when that happens, that's an issue. Obviously, that's just the cards that we have that abuse that card that way. That's not how it was designed at first, but it's still the problem with that card. In getting into, I don't think we had any more banned cards. It's just, I more so want to see things come back, and that's when getting into our next section. Demise should get limited to 1. The semi-limit doesn't make sense. Leaving it at 3 doesn't really make sense. Leaving it at 1 may make you feel sacked, but Demise isn't an extremely unfair card. It's not extremely unfair. It only fits in certain decks, but that's still a problem when, bang, you get 3 cards off the top of your deck. I feel like if people still wanted to play True Draco and Demises at 1, that's fair. You know, it's nothing ridiculous, but Demise at 3 makes the game struggle with floodgates being able to keep up. You know, obviously I'm talking about True Draco, but I'm not really talking about True Draco. There's other decks, weaker decks, obviously, that Demise helps, which could mean that Demise doesn't get hit. It's not going to upset me any. You know, I don't think Demise is that unfair, but it's unfair enough to where it should at least be looked at as getting hit to 1. You know, it makes bad decks better. That's the positive in it. But the negative is it makes you get floodgated to death. And is that really that good? Who knows? The other side of that coin is you could do the same with Diagram. Diagram could get hit, or it could get eroded to being once a turn, but I just don't see that happen. The Diagram isn't that bad, and it makes some cool combos and some cool decks that, you know, would have otherwise been impossible. You know, obviously you got Diagram could blow a Cosmo ship up. That's just one example. I don't really care about the Diagram part, but I think one or the other has to happen, and I think Demise is the way to go to hit it to 1. Not banned, because Demise isn't that bad, but it's still a little bit of a problem. Next up is coming up from the list is Elemental Hero Straddles. Sorry, something popped up on my screen. Elemental Hero Straddles. Straddles, obviously there's issues with FTKs or whatever, and there's small issues in the OCG, but it's not really doing anything. We're different, obviously, and you shouldn't take OCG as gospel, you know, because they don't always play certain things. Let's take, for instance, Phantom Skyblaster. They never saw the card. But Elemental Hero Straddles shouldn't be banned still. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you're going to bring him back, there's people complaining about there's certain FTKs. I think Cannon Soldier's involved some kind of way. Just hit Cannon Soldier. So if you want to ban something, ban Cannon Soldier. Ban that, get that out of the way. Because nobody wants to get burned to death. Everybody wants to play the game, not get sacked completely out of the game where you never got a chance to play if you don't open up in hand trap. And that's the issue that people have with Firewall. You know, people just don't want to get looped straight out of a game. And that's what Firewall does with just spamming monsters. You see what Goki is doing. It's taking over the game. It's not the most tier 0 deck ever because it can still brick, but when it's rolling, it's rolling. And that's why there's certain issues with that. Next up, coming up from the list, is Sure It to 1. In my opinion, every game needs a balance. So let's say True Draco stays a deck. And let's say Sure It comes up to 1. You have a deck that can stop certain decks from locking you out of playing, or should I say, Unicorn turns off certain cards on the field. Fair enough. But it can also lose badly to True Draco. Kind of like if True Draco and Straddles existed at the same time. Straddles, you know, that's kind of a bad example because you could dump Masterpiece or something back in the day. But there was a balance where there's no interaction with the decks, and so therefore you'd have a rough matchup. Like if Monarchs, full power Monarchs went against full power Straddles, there would be a small issue there for the Straddle player because, you know, what can a construct do with a Stormforth, as powerful as it is? That's where I see that sure it needs to exist so that Unicore can be what it was and be a kind of a fair balance. And if you love Necros, give those players a benefit. You know, people enjoy playing Necros. Why not let them play it? And you get to push. I'm talking to Konami about Konami. You can push your Devil Ritual stuff, and you can keep coming out with stuff, and it will push that. But then it won't be a 90% of the meta or 80% of the meta or whatever it used to be. It won't be that, but it'll still be a fun deck that you can play, enjoy, so on and so forth. We're in a different game. This is an eternal format game. So we have a cool thing where we're always going to have cards that we can play. We're always going to have certain decks that we can play if we adjust well enough. You know, shout out to Alan Nails. He's shown it. He's played Blue Eyes through every format and done very well with it. I think more decks need to be able to do that. And I think the Linked Vrains that's coming out is going to help that, the second installment. But I still think these are the little things to help that, you know, sure it being on the one, so on and so forth. So that's just my opinion. I can be wrong on that, but that's just how I see it. It's a healthy thing. Maybe Dark Destroyer coming up from being at one. Dark Destroyer is Dark Destroyer. It's not doing anything in the OCG again, but you know, we played different, and we've done more with Cosmo here in the TCG. I'm not just talking about America, but the TCG as a whole. So why should it be at one? That's a little bit of bias because I love the deck, but it is what it is. That may be down the line, or it may never happen, you know, but Cosmos is still a cool deck, and it's not totally unfair. You know, Emergency Teleport was unfair. Now, this is my pick that I feel like should obviously happen to balance the game. We have Hatronade, we have Twin Twister, we have Typhoon, we have Mystical Space Typhoon, we have Heavy Storm Duster, but we also, that's 5 if you think about it, and there's a few others, Night Beam being 6 if you want to count that. What happens is, how many floodgates are there? There's more than that. Hatronade, you know, blah blah blah. I feel like Harpy's Feather Duster should come off of the list. With the amount of floodgates that we have, with the decks that don't even play back row, with the way that Harpy's Feather Duster loses to Anti-Spell Fragrance, loses to Imperial Order, Harpy's Feather Duster should be fairly put into the game. It's in the OCG, but also it's kind of balanced. Heavy Storm can never come back for obvious reasons. You know, there's too many cards to where you could benefit off of Heavy Storming yourself, like Metal Foes, for instance. That's a possibility. You know, blowing up your own combinations, Heavy Storming your own Cosmo Town, so on and so forth. But Harpy's Feather Duster is balanced in that it's not going to help you progress that much, but it helps you to be able to alleviate a problem that you're dealing with. And it still loses to certain cards that you can't do anything with. Anti-Spell. If somebody flips Anti-Spell, you have to set the Harpy's Feather Duster anyway. Is that really all that unfair? Not really. Now, if those two were used in tandem, then yeah, you got a little bit of a problem. But that's neither here nor there. Lastly, things that should be at 3. We have Book of Moon and Maxi. Book of Moon as an interruption card. If you think about Torrential and all the other cards, the Torrential, the Compulse, so on and so forth. Those are all at 3. Book of Moon is obviously a little bit faster, but links exist. So once you're set up, is Book of Moon all that great? No. Book of Moon is a fair card. It was abused and I think limited because of the empty jar days. Shout out to Paul Cooper on that. But is that really the problem? Is that really what's limited? Is that really why it's still limited to 1? Is that what is limiting it? I don't know. You know, Book of Moon is, my friend used to say, it's the best trap card in the game. Yeah, it's kind of a reactive card that can happen to go in many different ways. It's one of the most skilled cards in the game. Kind of like it falls in that Called by the Grave category. But Book of Moon is a viable candidate that I could see coming to 3. It would add balance to the game, and not everybody would play it anyway. Lastly, Maxi. Maxi, for the simple fact that it shouldn't be banned. Shouldn't be at 1. Shouldn't be at 2. It should be at 3. there should always be that restriction on an unfair mechanic. Special summoning has been out of control for God knows how long. You know, if you've played this game for a while, you know how long it's been out of control. There's no way in the world that Max C shouldn't exist to at least semi-check it, because right now you have to play the hand traps or more hand traps simply so you can play your own deck, and that adjusts deck building. That's neither here nor there. It's opinion. Some people have their different opinions on Max C, but I feel like Max C should always be a 3, and it shouldn't really be adjusted. It should just be is what it is. I think Konami likes to maybe avoid having cards that you don't even have to think about being in your deck at 3. But it's still, if you have certain types of decks, you're not going to have Max C at 3. That's just, you know, if you have Gravekeepers, the Gravekeeper support that's coming out, if you have Gravekeeper full power support and you want to play Card of Demise and you're not going to play Max C, you may side it, but that's just opinion. That was the list. Tell us if you disagree. Give us another card if you don't agree with it at all. If you see something that you think totally should be hit, totally shouldn't be hit, so on and so forth, leave it down in the comments. Make sure you subscribe. We got so much stuff coming down the pipe that it's like drained me. I'm exhausted right now, but we're still cranking out videos. Shout out to all the Wise Guys Nation. YG, baby, we're signing out.